President Hakainde Hichilema has just opened Zambia's first-ever artisanal mining summit, a move many are calling historic. But this isn't just about mining. For some, it's about power, wealth, and control. And for others, it's about the legacy of Edgar Lungu, whose burial battle has already shaken the nation. Will HH's push for legal trade strengthen Zambia's economy, or deepen political divisions? Stay with us, because the answers may surprise you. President Hakainde Hichilema, HH, has officially opened Zambia's first artisanal mining summit, urging miners to trade legally. But what does this mean for Zambia's economy, politics, and the legacy of former President Edgar Lungu? In this video, we break down HH's mining strategy and its political implications, why legal trade is now a priority for Zambia, how this connects to Edgar Lungu's legacy and Zambia's future, the bigger picture for African politics. This isn't just about mining, it's about power, politics, and Zambia's direction. Subscribe to InspirAfrica Official for the latest updates on Zambia, African politics, and global affairs. The hidden gold of Zambia. Long before the cameras flashed at the first artisanal mining summit, Zambia's gold industry was already thriving, but not in the way most people imagined. Across riverbeds and hillsides, men, women, and even children worked with bare hands, crude tools, and improvised machines. Entire communities lived off small-scale mining, often in secret. The trade was informal, unregulated, and invisible to official statistics. Yet billions of kwacha slipped through Zambia's fingers. Smugglers carried raw gold across borders, selling to shadowy networks in Tanzania, South Africa, and Dubai. Powerful figures, businessmen, politicians, and sometimes even state officials, were rumored to benefit from this underground empire. For years, the gold flowed out quietly, enriching a few while leaving the miners themselves in poverty. Why was it allowed to continue? Some say it was negligence. Others whisper it was deliberate, that artisanal mining's disorder provided cover for elites to profit without accountability. What's undeniable is that by the time HH took office, Zambia was losing more in gold leakage than it was earning from many official exports. And so, when the first artisanal mining summit was announced, it was framed as a historic turning point, a chance to bring the hidden into the light. For the miners, it offered the promise of recognition and legitimacy. For the state, it was about seizing back control of resources that had been slipping away. But beneath the promises lay deeper questions. Could an informal sector, built on secrecy and survival, really be tamed by law and order? Would the miners trust the government after decades of neglect? And most importantly, who stood to lose if the hidden gold of Zambia was finally exposed? Because sometimes, bringing shadows into the light doesn't destroy them, it only reveals who was standing there all along. HH's Gambit. When President Hakainde Hichilema opened Zambia's first artisanal and small-scale mining summit, it was more than a policy event. It was a gamble, a calculated move in a high-stakes game where economics and politics are inseparably tied. For decades, artisanal miners worked in the shadows, seen as illegal operators rather than legitimate contributors to the economy. But HH flipped the script. By hosting a national summit, he wasn't just inviting them into the conversation. He was legitimizing their role in Zambia's future. Supporters praised him as bold. They said he had the courage to do what past presidents avoided: bring order to a chaotic sector, capture lost billions, and restore dignity to miners who had long been marginalized. They pointed to his business background, arguing that only HH, a man who rose from cattle herding to corporate boardrooms, could see the miners as entrepreneurs rather than criminals. But critics saw the move differently. To them, this was not just about miners or revenue, it was about power. By positioning himself as the champion of artisanal mining, HH was reaching directly into Zambia's grassroots, bypassing political elites and building a new base of loyalty. Was this summit really about reform? Or was it about reshaping the political map and cutting off the networks of influence that thrived under Edgar Lungu? Inside the conference halls, HH spoke of empowerment, jobs, and transparency. But outside, whispers grew louder. If artisanal mining was legalized and regulated, who would benefit? Would it be the poor miners, or would the system once again favor the well-connected? HH's gamble, then, was twofold. If successful, he would be remembered as the president who unlocked Zambia's hidden wealth and gave it back to the people. If it failed, He risked being accused of using miners as pawns in a grand political game. And in Zambia's history, gambles like this rarely come without consequences. The Empire of Copper. For more than a century, Zambia's identity has been forged in copper. The red metal built towns, fueled industries, and paid for national dreams. To the outside world, Zambia was never just a country, it was a copper empire. But empires come with rulers. For decades, foreign mining giants carved out fortunes while Zambia took home a fraction of the wealth. Tax deals were quietly negotiated, royalties were contested, and accusations of corruption were never far behind. Presidents rose and fell, but the copper giants remained, as powerful as ever. This dominance created a paradox. Copper made Zambia rich in potential, yet left ordinary citizens poor in reality. Hospitals lacked medicine, schools lacked books, and roads crumbled, even as copper shipments left in endless convoys. Artisanal mining, by contrast, was different. It wasn't dominated by multinational companies but by individuals, families, and small groups scratching the earth for survival. It represented freedom, chaos, and local control, the very opposite of the corporate copper empire. And this is where HH's summit takes on new meaning. By legitimizing artisanal mining, was he challenging the old order of the copper empire? Was he signaling that Zambia's future wouldn't be dictated solely by foreign companies, but by its own people? For Lungu's critics, this was the change Zambia had waited for. But for his allies, many of whom were tied to the copper industry, it felt like a threat. A shift in power that could weaken their influence. The empire of copper is not easy to challenge. It has deep roots, stretching into banks, parliaments, and even foreign capitals. But every empire eventually faces competition. And artisanal mining, chaotic as it is, may represent the first serious rival to copper's long-standing dominance. Could HH's gamble truly reshape Zambia's mining destiny? Or will the copper empire fight back to protect its crown? The Ghost of Lungu. Though Edgar Lungu is gone, his shadow lingers over Zambia's politics and over the Artisanal Mining Summit. Every speech, every announcement, every policy move by HH inevitably draws comparisons to his predecessor. Under Lungu's rule, mining was both an opportunity and a controversy. His government was accused of tolerating, even enabling, illegal gold trading networks. Gold that should have strengthened Zambia's reserves allegedly slipped through porous borders, enriching foreign buyers and politically connected elites. In villages across the Copperbelt and Eastern Province, miners whispered of middlemen who worked with powerful figures. Stories circulated of trucks moving gold under the cover of night, escorted not by police but by those with ties to the state. Whether myth or reality, these stories became part of Lungu's legacy, one of secrecy, missed opportunities, and deals hidden from public scrutiny. And now, with HH placing artisanal mining in the national spotlight, those ghosts threaten to return. Supporters of HH see the summit as a clean break. They argue that by formalizing artisanal mining, HH is cutting off the corruption pipelines that flourished under Lungu. But Lungu's allies push back, claiming HH is rewriting history to smear his predecessor and tighten his grip on power. The truth may lie somewhere in between. Lungu's legacy is not easily erased. His networks, allies, and influence remain active, shaping how the mining debate unfolds. In some corners, there are even fears that exposing artisanal mining fully could unravel secrets from the Lungu era that many would prefer remain buried. And so, at every turn of HH's mining push, the Ghost of Lungu hovers silently. Not just as a memory of the past, but as a reminder that in Zambia, politics and mining are never truly separated. Will HH's reforms finally exorcise that ghost, or will they awaken it in ways that could shake Zambia's future? The global eyes on Lusaka. The Artisanal Mining Summit may have been held in Lusaka, but its ripples were felt far beyond Zambia's borders. Sitting quietly among the delegates were observers from embassies, international corporations, and powerful foreign governments. Their presence was not ceremonial, it was strategic. For decades, Zambia's mineral wealth has been a battlefield for global powers. China invested heavily in copper, building mines, railways, and even towns. The United States, though slower, positioned itself as a partner in energy transition, eyeing Zambia's cobalt and lithium for the electric vehicle revolution. The European Union, desperate to reduce dependence on China, also turned its gaze to Lusaka. But artisanal mining complicates this picture. Unlike corporate concessions, artisanal mines are unpredictable, local, and politically sensitive. If legalized and organized, they could unlock vast new streams of gold, manganese, and gemstones, resources that every global power now competes for. That is why the summit drew such attention. Behind the smiles and handshakes, diplomats were calculating who would control Zambia's new mining wave. Would HH open the doors to fair partnerships, or would he simply replace one set of foreign benefactors with another? To HH, global attention was both a blessing and a burden. On one hand, it validated his push, showing the world that Zambia was ready to lead Africa in responsible artisanal mining. On the other, it raised the stakes. Every policy decision would now be scrutinized not only by Zambians but by capitals from Washington to Beijing. Meanwhile, Lungu's allies whispered warnings that foreign involvement in artisanal mining could mirror the old copper story, where outsiders profited while locals remained poor. They argued that HH risked repeating history, only this time with artisanal miners as the pawns. The world is watching Lusaka closely. For Zambia, this is more than a mining reform, it is a geopolitical test. Who will emerge as Zambia's true partner in this new mining chapter? The West, the East, or Zambia itself? The miners revolt. At first, the artisanal summit was hailed as a victory. Cameras showed smiling delegates, applause rang out, and HH spoke passionately about inclusion and opportunity. But far from the polished conference halls, in the villages and dusty mining towns, a very different mood began to brew. For artisanal miners, life has always been about survival. They dig with bare hands, sell through middlemen, and live day by day. Now, government officials were talking about registration, licenses, and regulation. To policymakers, these sounded like reforms. To the miners, they sounded like restrictions. What will they take from us next? One miner was overheard asking. To him and many others, regulation meant taxation. It meant permits they could not afford, surveillance they could not escape, and the loss of the little freedom they had carved out in a dangerous industry. Some feared being pushed aside entirely. With formal rules in place, would small-scale miners truly benefit, or would foreign companies and politically connected elites swoop in to dominate the new system? The fear of being replaced was real, and it was spreading. Whispers of discontent turned into organized meetings. Mining cooperatives questioned whether HH's plan was really designed for the people, or whether it was another top-down reform that left miners behind. In certain towns, protests loomed as miners demanded to be heard before new rules were imposed. For HH, this was the unexpected backlash. The very group he sought to legitimize, Zambia's artisanal miners, were now his most vocal critics. Some even accused him of using them as pawns in a broader political battle against Lungu's legacy. The revolt of the miners highlighted a deeper truth. Reforms that look visionary on paper often feel threatening on the ground. And unless HH can bridge that divide, his mining push may ignite unrest rather than unity. The miners had entered the spotlight, but they were not prepared to surrender their hard-earned independence without a fight. The legacy battle. Every president in Zambia is judged not just by the policies they introduce, but by the shadows of those who came before them. And in the mining sector, no shadow looms larger than that of Edgar Lungu. For HH, the Artisanal Summit was a chance to redefine the narrative. He spoke of transparency, empowerment, and accountability, values he wanted tied to his name. But in the background, Lungu's allies framed the story differently. They claimed HH was weaponizing mining reform to erase Lungu's record and secure his own place in history. The contrast between the two legacies is stark. Under Lungu, artisanal mining expanded but remained largely informal, with allegations of corruption and illicit gold flows haunting his tenure. Under HH, the push is toward formalization and state oversight, promising billions in revenue but risking alienation of miners on the ground. This clash of legacies has turned artisanal mining into more than just an economic policy. It has become a battlefield of memory. HH wants to be remembered as the reformer who brought order to chaos. Lungu's defenders argue he gave space for miners to thrive without heavy government interference. But legacies are not written in conference halls. They are forged in how people remember leadership long after the speeches fade. If HH succeeds, his name could be tied to a new mining revolution that empowered both the state and the people. If he fails, He risks being remembered as the president who overreached, replacing one form of exploitation with another. For Zambia, this is more than a political rivalry. It is a question of identity. Which vision of mining will define the nation's future? The unregulated freedom of Lungu's era, or the structured reform of HH's? In the end, legacies are never built in silence. They are battled for, in parliament, in courtrooms, in villages, and in the memory of a nation. And the fight between HH and Lungu's ghost has only just begun. The future written in stone. As the lights dimmed on Zambia's first artisanal mining summit, one truth became clear. This was not just another government event. It was a marker in history, a moment where Zambia stood at a crossroads, deciding what kind of nation it wants to become. For Hakainde Hichilema, the summit was more than policy. It was personal. He framed the artisanal sector as a sleeping giant, a resource long neglected, now waiting to awaken. But awakening giants is never without risk. Every promise he made, from formalizing miners to ensuring fair trade, creates expectations that, if unmet, could haunt his presidency. Yet beyond HH's ambitions, the summit revealed something deeper about Zambia. Artisanal mining is not just an economic issue. It is cultural, political, and generational. Villagers see it as survival. Politicians see it as power. Foreign investors see it as profit. And the government, it sees a chance to reshape the destiny of an entire nation. But history teaches us that every reform comes with winners and losers. If HH succeeds, Zambia could become a model for Africa, a country that turned its miners into entrepreneurs and its minerals into national wealth. If he fails, artisanal mining could spiral further into chaos, fueling corruption, unrest, and distrust of government promises. And then there is the question of legacy. Will the future remember HH as the leader who built an empire of order out of disorder, or as a reformer whose vision collapsed under its own weight? The shadows of Lungu's era will not disappear easily, and every move HH makes will be compared to the choices of those who came before him. In the end, Zambia's mining story is far from finished. The summit was not the conclusion but the opening chapter of a new struggle, one written not just in speeches and policies, but in the stones pulled from the earth, the sweat of miners, and the choices of leaders. The future, for Zambia and for HH, is still being written. And it is written in stone.